Hello and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Lease Accelerator. Our sponsor is committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag ArgyleDigital and follow us at Argyle Exec Forum. Also be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. Finally, and most importantly, we would love to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us. Now let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Guneet Arneja, Head of Data and Automation Initiatives at CBRE. We are excited to have Guneet with us for his opening keynote titled The Agile, Resilient, and Steadfast CFO. Welcome, Guneet, and over to you.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. And welcome, everyone. And thank you, Argyle, for setting up this forum. I really appreciate it. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll be your host, Guneet Arneja, as Brittany introduced myself. And you know what that means, that probably no one, Fortune 500 CFO was available for the next 30 minutes. So here I am, but worry not. For the 22 years that I have been in finance, I have plenty to talk about on this topic. You'll see a quick introduction from myself before we jump into our agenda for today. I've had the opportunity to work at several different companies. Looking at the logos, you might have thought, hey, I probably started working when I was 5, but I am fortunate enough to have started my career at Deloitte Consulting, which allowed me to work at many different companies in the finance organizations, leading the transformation initiatives for some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies for US. So at this point where I am in my career is I'm leading a very talented team over at CBRE through doing our data and automation initiatives, which are really focused on how do we optimize our costs within finance and across the company. From an education perspective, I grew up in Minnesota. I did my bachelor's and my MBA from the Carleton School of Management at the University of Minnesota. So in our listeners, if there's anyone from Minnesota, go Gophers. All right, guys, let's jump in. I kept the agenda very lean. There's 3 key topics we want to talk about over 30 minutes. I want the agenda to be more in-depth versus covering a lot of topics at a very high level. Okay, we're going to talk about what is on the minds of CFO today. What are some of, in 2024, as we begin the year, what are some of the key challenges that every CFO is facing? And looking at those challenges, one of the things that is being talked about a lot is how can automation help the CFOs in 2024? I'll talk about automation itself and why it's beneficial, but also if we, as a CFO, we want to build a agile finance team, what would it take for us to have that in place so that we can take advantages of the talent we have as well as overcome the challenges that we're facing in 2024. So those are the 3 things we're going to focus on over the next 30 minutes. So let's dive in, guys. I'm very excited to talk about these items. So let's start with our problem statement. What are we facing in 2024? It's been a crazy year. We saw 2023 where many companies looked at, over the last 18 months or so, S&P 1200 companies have taken several actions to reduce their costs, and 12% have announced significant workforce cuts. In my opinion, those cuts were temporary cuts, and I don't think they will answer the headwinds that are heading towards our companies today. And I'm going to highlight 4 of them, which are not temporary, they are going to have an impact on our businesses overall. First one is the demand growth. IMF projects that the GDP growth for advanced economies over 2023 through 2026 will be 33% lower, 1/3 lower than the previous decade's average. So we're looking at the demand to slow down. And that's evident in the GDP that we're seeing in the US and across the globe, right? And that means for every company, they need to be very careful on how they grow and how they spend. The second item that is out there is inflation-induced price sensitivity. Our customers, what we're seeing, are not as loyal as they used to be because of inflation and price pressures. In 2023, for example, 90% of the consumers were okay switching to an alternative brand just based on price. So we have to be very careful how we're pricing and what cost pressures do to our pricing of our products. Which brings me to my third point, which is higher costs. We know that in 2023 to 2025, the expected inflation rate is going to be 2.9% percentage points higher than the previous 2 decades average. We know inflation is rampant in US and even more so outside of US. And that's going to have an impact on our raw material and everything else. And lastly, we have a talent gap that's even widening. Most of the seasoned employees that we have are closer to retirement age. The people that are close to retirement age has grown by 66% in the US and more than doubled in the UK. These are our seasoned professionals, and we're not able to replace the institutional knowledge that they have. With all these headwinds, what's top on mind for the CFOs is how do we protect our businesses against these challenges that we face in 2024 and beyond. So this has to be a strategic realignment. So where is the CFO's mind today? Gartner believes the 3 key priorities for every CFO in 2024 are, number one, they're under increased pressure to show profitable growth. When I say profitable growth, that means how do we increase revenues and reduce costs? For the CFO, it's super important in 2024 to put in motion deals to cost optimization. And I'm seeing that across the companies. Cuts are just the beginning, but really to tackle these headwinds, we need to rethink how we spend. Secondly, CFOs are under immense pressure to invest in new technology because the technology is advancing super fast, particularly AI. Generative AI especially took the market by storm in late last year. And more companies are investing into it because if they don't, they fear being left behind. And the top priority for a CFO is to find a way to invest in these type of technologies at the same time being very cost conscious. And lastly, but very importantly, tackle the talent shortages that we have in the key capability areas so that we can retain and attract new talent as we go through this journey in 2024. So those are the 3 key items that I'm going to touch on how a CFO should think about and approach it. But this is coming from Gartner as these are the top 3 items that a CFO may have on their mind for 2024. Okay. With that, let's jump into, if you are a CFO, you're looking at cost optimization and revenue growth. How do you optimize your cost? One of the places where CFOs are turning to is automation. Can we automate our processes so that it costs less to build what we build? It could be we're building a widget, we're building a plug, whatever it is. How can we automate our processes across the board so that our cost can be lower to support a revenue growth that we can bring in. Okay, so we increase our revenue, but we don't increase our cost in an equal manner. There's lots of benefits to automate. First, productivity goes up. You could get more out of the same employee with automation than you would without it. And we've seen the number of employees it's taken to reach $1 million in revenue has consistently declined over the last decade. And a lot of that is due to the technologies that we're introducing into our processes. Okay, so that journey has shown positive results, and it shouldn't stop here. We expect automation to drive further productivity gains over the coming years. The other thing that automation will do for you is accuracy. When you train bots to do a process, they will perform that same process over and over again without changing it. Unlike humans, where you have to go through training and there's room for human error. So having automation in the process helps you build more reliable and more standardized products for your customers. Thirdly, if you automate, you're making sure that if there are controls that need to be followed, compliance issues that you're trying to tackle, that every single time your product has passed those compliance checks. Every single time the controls were followed, because it's not a human doing it so that nothing was circumvented. It has been automated, and everything was, and the entire process was followed and tracked. The next good thing about automation is these are some of the technologies that are being used right now are non-invasive. What that means is you're not looking at ripping out your backbone like your ERP or your procurement systems. You're looking at, with automation technologies, putting technology on top of your existing framework of applications and help those applications work more efficiently. So you pull in automation where you have manual effort, where you put in an ERP, for example, but it doesn't do exactly what you're looking for. That's where you would plug in an automation technology to help the ERP, what you were doing manually, to automate that so that you can feed that into a system that you already have. So it's non-invasive. You're not ripping out technologies to put in this technology. It sits on top of it. And lastly, with automation, this is probably the biggest benefit, which is underestimated, is the improved employee morale. No one wakes up to say, hey, I'm going to do spreadsheets and do data entry today, and I'm excited about that. You automate those tasks that are rule-based. You're looking at an employee who could focus on more value-additive tasks, helping them feel like they're growing, right? So there's lots of benefits for automating, but it's important to understand what we should be automating and what we should not try to automate. Not everything is automatable, right? So this is a quick graph to show we're looking at a split of a digital workforce, which is automated bots, partnering up with human workforce, which is really focused on leadership, support, staff, doing things that are more value add. So, and if you think of it from a data perspective, you're looking at the digital workforce, which would be the bots, the dashboards, the workflow systems. They're doing a lot of the data gathering. How do I bring all the data together? Let's automate that. Let's make sure all the data is coming in properly. And how do we use that data that we've now collected is all that the human workforce should be focused on. Creating insights out of the data that we've collected. How do we take action based on what we're seeing our data telling us, right? So have that split in mind. Not everything should be automated. Not everything should be replaced by a bot. But Data collection can be data insights, and using the data should not. I'll keep moving. Once we define what should be automated, we should also look at how we want to automate. A lot of companies, and what you see in the graph here, there's a tail to automation. A lot of companies are very successful at the short tail of automation, which is your big initiatives that will generate lots of savings for you. And a lot of companies, what they end up doing is set up a center of excellence for automation, and they go after these big savings. McKinsey estimates there's about 45% of activities and organizations can be automated, 45%, right? The short tail of automation, which a center of excellence, which is the big one, big automation ideas that a company can attack to reduce costs, is really only 3 to 7%. This is across departments that center of excellence can go attack. Many companies have been successful at doing so, using tools like bots and so on and so forth. Where most companies are not so successful is attacking the remaining 40% of those activities. That's called the long tail of automation, right? And that's the untapped area of cost savings that I've seen companies struggle with. To do that, these are 40% of the tasks that are very unique to your day-to-day. How do you automate that? And for that, you don't need a center of excellence. What we need to do is empower our employees to automate their own tasks. It's a concept of low-code, no-code applications that we need to empower our employees with. So when they have something that only they do on a weekly basis, or maybe 2 or 3 employees in a large organization does, they still have the ability to automate that without having to call in a programmer to help them with it. And that's how you tap into the remaining 40% of the value that can be generated in an organization. All right, guys. So hopefully this kind of gives you, if you're thinking about how to reduce costs, you should look at automation. And if you're looking at automation, what should you automate and how you should be looking at automating. But automation in your organization will only work if you have a finance team that's ready to embrace it, okay? If you don't have a finance team that's set up that way, the adoption is not gonna be there. So the remaining 7-8 minutes of this call, I wanna spend some time on what is that secret sauce that makes the finance team so agile that it gets set up to be very successful over the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? So I'm going to focus on 4 different things that when you look at your organization as a CFO, that you must have people that are really focused on these 4 things. And that is the secret sauce for having a finance team that's agile and that can adapt to everything that's happening around the world, whether it's around technology, whether it's around changing rules, so on and so forth. The first one is process. This is something that any CFO can start looking at today and making a big difference to the cost and the revenue that a company is generating. Because every company has processes that are not ideal, right? So process improvement is easy to get started on, but it is a never-ending task, right? You want to start looking at all your processes. The first thing you want to do is, can we standardize these processes as much as possible? Always make sure you're spending your time where the juice is worth the squeeze. So you want to make sure you track the value that you're going to get by changing a process and standardizing. If the juice is not worth the squeeze, come back to it later. And share the process automations that you're doing, process optimizations that you're doing across the organization. And that's going to be the key for you to be able to scale scale and realize the savings that you're looking for. So this is something that any CFO can start with looking at their processes. And many organizations have already invested in process owners, so on and so forth, so that are really looking at their job is to look at their processes and improve workflows, improve technologies around it, right? The second thing that you should have a focus on within the finance office is technology. And I'm not talking about large investments into things like ERPs and procurement systems and so on and so forth. I'm talking about how do you stay on top of the technologies that are changing so rapidly that can help you create a competitive advantage against your competitor, right? Each business issue is going to be complex in its own unique way. So you don't need just one system that you rely on, and every time you want to change your business, you go change that system. You want to build a toolkit of various technologies within your organization so that when you have a problem, you find the right technology to apply to that problem so that you can solve it quickly and in an agile manner, right? That's what this is all about. Expand the toolkit of technologies that you do have. Finance must make these investments in some of the emerging technologies, and they're coming fast and furious. It's as if the floodgates have opened. There's so many companies coming with very great technologies that can be applied to enterprise level applications. AI being an example of that. Barriers to entry is going to be finding that funding to allow technology to be brought into an organization. But you can bring in great technologies, but they're not going to be successful. And I'll tell you why. Technology only goes as far as your people. If you don't invest in your people learning that technology will not help you. So focus on people. And this applies to one of the focus areas for the CFOs for 2024 and addresses the talent gap that's widening. Education and digital upskilling of your employees to improve their job satisfaction and retention is crucial. It's a lot easier and a lot effective cost-wise to train an existing employee and upskill them into a role versus going out and hiring a new employee, right? So focus on that and invest in it. The new generation that's coming out understands that. And it's expected that Gen Alpha, which is anyone that's being born after 2013, I believe, is not going to work the same way that previous generations have, where you're an accountant or you are a electrician, you are that for the rest of your life. The new generations that's coming out is going to reinvent themselves every 10 years through digital upskilling, through relearning. That's where this generation will crave to work for companies that are investing into their future, their upskilling. And companies have a big role to play. Companies that invest in it will get the talent out there, and companies that don't will be left out. And lastly, as a finance leader, you must focus on your data. Because you can't do any of the automations, you can't drive down the costs, you can't provide insights to your leaders if you don't have the correct data governance established and you are paying attention to how you manage your data, the quality of that data, and make it available to everyone. There's a quote here that I truly believe in, that data will drive automation. If you don't have data, you can't build any artificial intelligence models. And automation can enhance your data. With automation, you can make sure you're getting in good data. You're not getting junk in, junk out, right? So both of them go really well hand in hand. Key takeaways. Summarize everything we talked about. CFOs will be pushed in 2024 to cut costs in various places and to drive growth. They will be pushed to invest in technologies like AI and in transformation initiatives. And they will be asked to address this talent gap that's widening. For all of these challenges, automation can help. However, to be successful, an agile finance team has to be set up, which has that focus on those 4 pillars that I talked about. Improve your processes so you can reduce your costs. Invest in new technologies so you can improve productivity and fuel growth. And also set up a competitive advantage. Upskill your people, invest in them so that you can close out this talent gap. And enable your data for the decision makers. That's everything I have for you guys today. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask those in the chat. I'll pass this over to you, Brittany.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Guneet, for such an insightful presentation. And as a reminder to the audience, you can still enter questions. We'll go ahead and review a few that came through. This one question asks, what ideas do you have to help companies tap into the long tail of automation and empower their employees?
Great question. And it's very close to my heart, guys. It's a challenging topic. The long tail of automations, like I mentioned, can only be tapped into if you are giving the tools, the technology, first of all, to your employees to solve their own problem. For example, I work best with examples, so I'm going to give you one. And that is around if you have a workflow that's basically someone asking for approval in emails, and the emails go back and forth, you lose time. That's a great example for where this long tail of automation can come into play. Invest in a workflow automation that allows people to set up their own workflows. There's several tools out there that are very basic that anyone can go in and say, I'm going to set up this process and I need these approvals at this level. And it automatically will route your transactions all the way through that workflow cycle. And it gets rid of all of that email back and forth and the time that you lose. Those are the ways that you want to try and attack the long tail, which is bring in the technology, train your people on using that technology so they can solve their own problems and not be dependent on someone in IT to help build it for them. That's the only way to attack it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Excellent, thank you. And I think this is a good follow-up question. But is there ever any pushback or reluctance to change from employees when updating traditional finance processes?
Always. Never have I come to a place where people have said, hey, I want to change. Change is hard. Change is hard for no matter who it is. Change is hard for me. What you want to manage is expectations in that case. The only route to success is if you tell people, hey, change is coming. It's going to be hard for you. And there's going to be failures in the beginning, right? You have to be open and confront that. Set those expectations right. It's okay if you fail. We're going to get back up and we're going to improve that process even further so that we don't fail again. And we're going to keep doing that until we have a process we don't have to focus on. So set those expectations right. You're going to get pushback. You're going to get, why do we have to do this? But if you are true to your mission, in time, and if you set the expectations right, people will see the benefit of it. There's a great graph if you look it up on Google. It's the value of despair. You'll see how change actually happens. I don't know why my slides are just moving through quickly. How the change happens, where people get excited, they go, and after the change is implemented, they go into a valley of despair, but they emerge back up stronger to say, yes, this was worth it. I've seen change happen many times like that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looks like we have time to end with one final question. Just do you have any recommendations for ensuring a smooth transition, especially for companies that are looking to implement new technologies, especially in the new year?
I'm sorry, it's recommendations to implement new technologies?
Yeah, just for a smooth transition to any new technologies.
Yeah. Make sure it is value additive. What that means is 2024 is going to be very different. There's lots of technologies out there, and you're going to get bombarded by vendors saying, hey, here's a technology that everyone's buying. Don't fall for that. Make sure there is a fit within your organization, and how you do that is make sure you're following a strict value realization framework. What that means is, what value does this technology add to my organization? Do I need it? Or is this just a next shiny ball that's out there? If you are staying true to your value realization, you'll get to the right technologies, and your users will see the value in it to adopt it more quickly.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Guneet, again, for such an insightful and excellent keynote presentation. That is all the time we have for questions, but I also wanted to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. Thank you again, Guneet.
Thank you all.